As President Muhammadu Buhari embarks on his very first vacation since becoming president in May last year, spotlight falls on his foreign trips. The presidency clears air on matters arising. That's our major focus on the program. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. I'm Sheon Wakimbale. This is Politics Today here on Channels Television, the nation's news leader. President Muhammadu Buhari has embarked on his very first vacation since assuming office in May of last year. Legally, he's permitted to do so as a president, but controversy has trailed his decision to proceed on what some have now termed a sudden vacation. Questions are raised in several areas, but particularly some critics of President Muhammadu Buhari are concerned about the volume and number of the president's trips. Here is what the governor of Ekiti State, the man who has called himself a self-styled opposition, the face of opposition in Nigeria, Ayodele Fayose, says about him when he traveled to the UK. Governor Fayose says most of the trips embarked on by the president were unnecessary. He added that ministers, or at best the vice president, could have been made to attend most of the functions being attended abroad by the president. There are several other things that he said, but the president has a reply to that, and this is what the president said as a reaction to this.
Any frivolous journey that I have undertaken. I understand one of the governors, to be the governor of Ekiti, answered, he said, every trip I made, it cost Nigeria at least $1 million. I don't know how he worked that out, but every trip I have made, there must be reasons, economic and political, that justify the trip. So those who don't see it the way the government see it, they have the right not to agree and to say whatever they like. We'll try and give them appropriate reply.
That's the president there in the UK when journalists were asking him about his foreign trips. But let's take a look at what some people what he exactly has been his trips since assuming office in May. These are listed there from June the 3rd, the very first trip about security and insurgency in Nigeria. They went to Niger Republic, to Chad. He went on to Germany and South Africa. Those were his very first major trip, few days after he assumed office. In July, he went to the USA, August to Benin Republic, September 7th to Ghana, September 14, 2015 to France, and he went to Malta, to South Africa. And in January, he began with a trip to Benin Republic and to UAE, to Kenya. From Kenya, he went to Ethiopia, and from France, he flew to Britain. It's been almost, President has spent about 1/4 of his days in office outside of the country. Some people are asking questions about how much has been spent on these trips, especially at a time as this. And some people are also asking a big question. The purpose of this economically and politically, is the nation benefiting from all of these trips? Could the president have delegated all the members of his cabinet, perhaps his vice president, some ministers to represent him in some of these trips? Well, we look at some of these issues, we get perspectives to it, but the presidency has opened its door to us, and we have the spokesperson of the president, Mr. Femi Adesina, joins us in the studio here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You just returned from the UK. I mean, I guess you left the president there, isn't it?
I did.
Yeah. All right. I mean, there are issues about the president's foreign trips. But first and foremost, the president has gone to almost 20 places, or traveled about 20 times since assuming office. He spent 1/4 of his days outside of Nigeria. Do you think that is justified?
If he stayed at home and he didn't travel when he needed to, the same people who are complaining now will say we didn't vote a man who will be desk bound. We want a president that will circulate that will be where things are happening that will benefit the country. So you find that at times, head or tail, you lose with Nigerians. But like the president himself said, every trip had been necessary. There was no single frivolous trip in all the journeys he has made.
But if you look at it, I mean, we're looking at the issue of even the first time that he got into office in June. He got into office on the 29th of May. In June, he traveled about 4 or 5 times.
Yes.
And one would be wondering, why would he didn't even settle in office before he made those trips?
What were those trips about? He went to Chad, he went to Niger, he was to go to Cameroon, but then the G7 invited him to Germany. And what was the reason for all these trips? Security. Security, because he needed to forge an alliance with our neighbors. That was why he went to Niger, and he went to Chad. He was going to Cameroon when he was invited to G7. Why did they invite him? They said, come and brief us about the security situation in Nigeria and tell us what we can do. So a good number of those trips were about Nigeria's security. And don't forget that when he got into office in May last year, there were a minimum of 20 local governments in custody of Boko Haram. Local governments where they had hoisted their flags, in which they had declared their caliphates, and they were administering. Now, today, about 8 months later, not a single one. The governor of Borno State still reiterated it today, that not a single local government is in the hands of Boko Haram. You didn't do that by sitting pretty on your seat.